The late afternoon sun streamed through the kitchen window as Rose stood at the sink, scrubbing the same plate for what must have been 5 minutes straight. Her mind was elsewhere, calculating and recalculating the bills that had piled up on the corner of the dining table. The water ran hot over her hands, but she barely noticed. Behind her, the front door opened with a creak that needed fixing, another item on their endless to-do list. "I'm home," called Thomas, his voice carrying the weight of another long day at the construction site. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door, a habit from happier times when the sound would bring Rose running to greet him with a kiss. Today, like many days lately, she just called back, "In the kitchen." Thomas walked in, his work boots leaving faint dusty prints on the floor Rose had mopped that morning. He noticed but said nothing, just like Rose said nothing about the dirt. These days they let a lot of things slide to avoid another argument. "Any calls today?" Thomas asked, opening the fridge and frowning at its meager contents. Rose finally turned off the water and dried her hands on a dishcloth with frayed edges. "Just the usual. Bill collector for the credit card. I told them we'd pay something next week." She paused, remembering the other call. "Oh, and Mrs. Wilson from next door invited us for dinner on Sunday." Thomas nodded, still staring into the fridge as if something might materialize if he looked long enough. "Did you check the mail? I'm expecting that overtime check." "It didn't come," Rose said, the words falling between them like stones. "I checked twice." Thomas closed the fridge door harder than necessary. "Of course it didn't. Nothing ever comes when we need it." Rose bit her lip. She'd been out of work for 3 months now, ever since the community center where she taught art classes had cut their budget. 3 months of promising Thomas she'd find something soon. 3 months of watching him take on extra shifts and weekend work. 3 months of feeling like she wasn't pulling her weight. "I had another interview today," she offered, hoping to ease the tension that seemed to follow them around like a storm cloud. Thomas looked up, a flicker of hope crossing his tired face. "Yeah, how'd it go?" "Good, I think," Rose said, not mentioning that it was for a part-time position that would barely cover their grocery bill. "They said they'd call by the end of the week." Thomas nodded and came over to kiss her cheek, an automatic gesture that lacked the warmth it once held. "That's good. You'll get it. You're too talented not to." Rose smiled, grateful for the momentary connection, rare as it had become. "There's leftover stew from yesterday. Not much, but enough for dinner." As Rose reheated the stew, Thomas flipped through the mail she'd left on the counter, bills, advertisements, and a flyer from the local bakery. He held up the colorful paper with a picture of an elaborate cake. "Sweet Delights is having a sale for their 5th anniversary. Rose glanced over, stirring the pot. "Their cakes are amazing. Remember the one we got for Joey's graduation?" The mention of their nephew's celebration from the previous year brought a genuine smile to Thomas's face. "Your sister couldn't believe we splurged on something that fancy." "Worth every penny to see his face," Rose said, the memory warming her. They ate dinner in relative silence, the weight of their financial struggles sitting between them like an unwelcome guest. After they finished, Thomas cleared his throat. "Your birthday's coming up next week." Rose waved a dismissive hand. "Let's not worry about that this year. It's just another day." "It's your 35th, Thomas insisted. "We should do something." "Maybe just a quiet dinner here," Rose suggested. "I can make that chicken dish you like." Thomas frowned, setting down his spoon. "No, I'm not letting our situation ruin your birthday. You deserve better than leftover stew and bills for your birthday." Rose reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "I don't need anything fancy, really." But Thomas had that determined look she knew so well, the one that had first attracted her to him when they met at a friend's barbecue 12 years ago. "I've been setting a little aside from each paycheck. Not much, but enough for something special." Rose felt a pang of guilt. "Thomas, we should be saving that money for once," he interrupted. "Let me do this, please." The way he said please made Rose's objections die in her throat. She nodded, recognizing his need to provide this small joy despite their circumstances. The next morning, after Thomas left for work, Rose sat at their small kitchen table with her laptop, searching for job listings while keeping an eye on her phone. The interview from yesterday had gone well, but she'd said that about the last 3 interviews too. None had called back. Around noon, her phone rang. Rose lunged for it, heart racing, but it wasn't the potential employer. It was Thomas. "Hey," she answered, trying to hide her disappointment. "Do you still have that bakery flyer?" Thomas asked without greeting. Rose glanced at the counter where she'd left it. "Yes, why?" "I was thinking about your birthday. What if we got a cake from Sweet Delights? Nothing huge, just something nice. With the sale, it might not be too expensive." Rose hesitated. "Thomas, I know what you told me," he said, his voice softening. "But I want to do this. You haven't had a proper celebration since all this started." All this. Their code for the financial mess that began when Thomas's company cut hours last year, followed by Rose losing her job. Their savings had dwindled to almost nothing, and credit card debt had climbed. "Okay," Rose conceded, knowing how important it was to him. "But something small," she heard the smile in his voice. "I'll call them during my lunch break." "Love you." "Love you too," Rose said, feeling a small spark of happiness at the thought of celebrating her birthday after all. Later that afternoon, Thomas called again. "I ordered the cake. It's a special one, chocolate with that hazelnut filling you love. They said it would be ready the morning of your birthday." Rose found herself genuinely excited. "That sounds perfect. Who are we inviting?" "Just a few people. Your sister and Joey, my brother and his wife, and maybe the Washingtons from church. Small gathering, nothing fancy." The next few days passed in a blur of job applications and household chores. Rose noticed Thomas seemed distracted, checking his phone more often, disappearing to make calls. She assumed it was work-related stress but couldn't help feeling a distance growing between them. 3 days before her birthday, Rose was folding laundry when her phone rang. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Mrs. Bennett? This is Claire from Sweet Delights Bakery. I'm calling about your cake order." Rose frowned, confused. "Yes? We just wanted to confirm that someone will be picking up the cake on Thursday morning, and to remind you about the remaining balance." "Remaining balance?" Rose echoed. "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Bennett placed a deposit of $20, but there's still a balance of $45 due at pickup." Rose's stomach tightened. $45 they didn't have. "I see. Thank you for letting me know." After hanging up, Rose sat on the edge of the bed, the half-folded shirt forgotten in her lap. Thomas hadn't mentioned a deposit or a remaining balance. Either he'd forgotten to tell her, or he was planning to use money they needed for bills. Neither option sat well with her. When Thomas got home that evening, Rose was waiting in the living room, the bakery's number still displayed on her phone. "Sweet Delights called today," she said as Thomas hung up his jacket. His shoulders tensed slightly. "Oh? There's a $45 balance due on the cake." Thomas nodded slowly. "I know, I was going to tell you. I have it covered." "How?" Rose asked, trying to keep her voice level. "We're already behind on the electric bill." Thomas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he made when he was uncomfortable. "I picked up an extra shift this weekend." "It's handled, Rose." "You're working on my birthday weekend." "Thomas, that's not what I want. It's just Saturday morning. I'll be home in plenty of time for the party." He sat beside her on the couch. "I want this to be special." Rose felt tears threatening. "But at what cost? We're barely keeping our heads above water as it is." "It's one cake, Rose, one celebration." His voice hardened. "Is that too much to ask after everything we've been through?" The argument that followed was like many they'd had recently, circular, exhausting, and ultimately unresolved. Thomas insisted he had the situation under control. Rose worried about their mounting bills. Both went to bed angry, backs turned to each other in their queen-sized bed that suddenly felt too small for the space between them. On Wednesday, the day before her birthday, Rose received a call that changed everything. The community center was reopening their art program with new funding, and they wanted her back, not part-time but full-time with benefits. She accepted immediately, joy and relief washing over her. This was what they needed, a steady second income to help them climb out of the hole they'd been in. She couldn't wait to tell Thomas. But when he came home that evening, something was different. He didn't meet her eyes, didn't ask about her day. He simply said he needed to shower and disappeared into the bathroom for nearly an hour. Rose's good news remained unshared as tension filled their small apartment. Something was wrong, but Thomas wouldn't say what. He picked at his dinner, checked his phone constantly, and went to bed early, claiming a headache. As Rose lay awake beside his sleeping form, she wondered what tomorrow would bring. Her 35th birthday, a chocolate hazelnut cake, and a gathering of loved ones. It should have been something to look forward to. Instead, she felt a growing sense of dread, as if the cake that had come to symbolize so much more than a birthday celebration might be the very thing to push their fragile relationship to the breaking point. Morning light crept through the curtains as Rose opened her eyes. The space beside her was empty, the sheets cold. Thomas had already left for his extra shift. On her birthday, she sighed and reached for her phone. Several birthday messages had arrived overnight, from her sister Diane, her nephew Joey, and a few friends. Nothing from Thomas, though she tried not to read too much into that. He'd probably wish her happy birthday in person when he got home. Rose padded to the kitchen in her slippers, surprised to find a small gift box on the counter with a handwritten note. Happy birthday. Sorry I had to work. Pick up cake at 2. Love, T. Inside the box was a delicate silver bracelet. Nothing fancy or expensive, but pretty. Rose slipped it onto her wrist, touched by the gesture despite everything. Maybe today would turn out all right after all. The morning passed in a flurry of cleaning and preparing for the small gathering. Rose vacuumed, dusted, and arranged fresh flowers from their tiny backyard garden. By noon, the apartment looked better than it had in months. Her phone rang just as she finished setting up the folding table they used for gatherings. It was Diane. Happy birthday, big sis. Diane's cheerful voice came through. We still on for 5 o'clock? Yes, everything's ready, Rose replied. Well, almost. I need to pick up the cake at 2. The famous Sweet Delights cake Thomas has been going on about. Joey can't wait. That boy and his sweet tooth, Diane paused. How are things with you two? Any better? Rose twirled the new bracelet around her wrist. It's complicated, but I got some good news yesterday. The community center called. They want me back full-time with benefits. Rose. That's amazing. Did Thomas flip when you told him? I haven't told him yet. He came home in a mood last night, went straight to bed. Diane's sigh was audible. You two need to talk. Really talk? I know. Rose glanced at the clock. Listen, I should get ready to pick up this cake. See you at 5? After hanging up, Rose dressed in her favorite blue dress, the one Thomas always said brought out her eyes. She checked her purse, keys, phone, wallet. The wallet was thin, with just enough for groceries until next week, but nothing extra. Thomas had said he'd handled the cake payment. Sweet Delight's bakery was busy when Rose arrived. The bell jingled as she entered, greeted by the warm smell of fresh bread and sugar. Behind the counter, a young woman with a bright yellow apron looked up. Hi, welcome to Sweet Delights. I'm here to pick up a cake. Last name Bennett. The woman checked a tablet. Bennett. Chocolate hazelnut, right? Let me grab that for you. She disappeared into the back, returning moments later with a beautiful cake box. Here you go. It's one of our premium designs. Chef Michaela did the decorating herself. Rose peered through the clear top of the box. The cake was gorgeous. Chocolate frosting swirled into delicate patterns with gold-dusted hazelnuts arranged artfully on top. Far fancier than she'd expected. Far more expensive looking, too. It's beautiful, Rose said, suddenly understanding Thomas's eagerness about the surprise. The woman smiled. Your husband has good taste. That'll be $45 for the remaining balance. Rose blinked. I thought my husband was going to take care of that. Oh. The woman checked her tablet again. We have a $20 deposit, but the remaining balance is still due. The total was $65. It's one of our premium cakes. Rose's stomach nodded. Thomas had said he'd handled it. Had he forgotten? Or had he expected her to pay without telling her? I don't have $45 with me, Rose admitted, embarrassment creeping up her neck. The woman's smile faltered. Oh, well, maybe you could call your husband? Rose pulled out her phone, stepping away from the counter as she dialed Thomas. It went straight to voicemail, of course. He was working. He's not answering, Rose said, returning to the counter. He must be busy at work. The woman looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, but I can't release the cake without payment. Store policy. Rose felt tears threatening. This was humiliating. On her birthday, no less. Could I put down what I have now and come back with the rest? How much do you have? Rose checked her wallet. $23, the woman hesitated. Let me talk to my manager. As the woman walked away, Rose tried Thomas again. Voicemail. She sent a text. At bakery. They say we still owe 45. I don't have it. Call me ASAP. The woman returned, followed by an older man in a crisp white shirt. Mrs. Bennett? I'm Victor, the owner. There seems to be a misunderstanding. Rose explained the situation, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Victor nodded sympathetically. Tell you what, since it's your birthday and you're already here, take the cake. Just have your husband stop by with the payment when he can. Relief washed over Rose. Thank you so much. I promise he'll come by today. Don't worry about it. Enjoy your birthday. Victor handed her the cake box with a smile. Rose carefully carried the cake to her car, checking her phone again. Still no response from Thomas. The drive home was tense, her mind racing with questions. Why hadn't Thomas paid the full amount? Why had he told her it was handled? Where was the money he said he'd set aside? Back at the apartment, Rose placed the cake in the refrigerator and tried Thomas again. This time he picked up. Hey, he said, sounding distracted. Thomas, I just had to pick up the cake and they said we still owed $45. A pause. What? I thought I paid for it already. You left a $20 deposit. The total was $65, another longer pause. $65? They told me it would be around $40 with the sale. Well, it wasn't. The owner let me take it anyway, but we need to pay them. Thomas's voice tightened. I don't have that kind of money right now, Rose. I told you we should have just made a cake at home. Rose felt her patience snap. You told me nothing of the sort. This was your idea, Thomas. Your surprise. You said you had it covered. I meant the deposit. I thought you'd cover the rest since you're always saying we're in this together. The accusation stung. How was I supposed to know that? You've barely spoken to me in days. I've been working extra shifts to keep this roof over our heads, Thomas shot back. While I what, Thomas? While I got my job back? That's right, the community center called yesterday. I start next week. Full-time with benefits, silence on the line. Then why didn't you tell me? I tried. You came home, didn't speak to me, and went straight to bed. More silence. Look, Rose said, trying to calm down. Just come home. We'll figure out the money for the cake, and we can talk about everything else later. People will be here at 5, Thomas sighed. Fine. I'll be there by 4. Rose hung up, sinking onto a kitchen chair. This wasn't how her birthday was supposed to go. But maybe, just maybe, her good news about the job would turn things around. The hours ticked by. 3 o'clock, 3:30, 4, no Thomas. At 4:15, Rose tried calling again. No answer. She sent another text. Where are you? People will be here soon. 4:30 came and went. Rose paced the living room, checking her phone every few minutes. Still nothing from Thomas. The doorbell rang at 10 minutes to 5. Rose smoothed her dress and plastered on a smile. It was Diane and Joey arriving early to help. Happy birthday. They chorused, arms full of gifts and grocery bags. Rose accepted their hugs, trying to hide her worry. Thank you. Come in, come in. Diane saw through her immediately. What's wrong? Where's Thomas? He's running late. Joey, now 17 and nearly as tall as Rose, headed for the kitchen with the grocery bags. I brought soda and chips, he called over his shoulder. When he was out of earshot, Diane raised an eyebrow at Rose. Spill it. Rose quickly explained about the cake fiasco and Thomas's no-show. Diane's expression darkened. That man, I swear— Don't, Rose interrupted. Not today, please. More guests arrived. Thomas's brother Paul and his wife Grace, then the Washingtons from church. Still no sign of Thomas. Rose kept the conversation flowing, accepted gifts and well wishes, all while checking her phone under the table. At 6 o'clock, with everyone gathered in the living room sharing stories and laughs, the front door finally opened. Thomas stepped in, looking tired and irritated. His eyes widened slightly at the group. Sorry I'm late, he mumbled, nodding at the guests. Rose moved to his side, whispering, Where have you been? I've been calling for hours. Battery died, he replied tersely. Had to sort out some things. Before Rose could respond, Diane announced it was time for cake. Everyone moved to the dining area, where Rose had set up plates and forks earlier. The conversation flowed around her, but Rose barely heard it, hyper-aware of Thomas's tense presence beside her. As she went to get the cake from the refrigerator, Thomas followed her into the kitchen. Let me help, he said. Reaching for the cake box, Rose handed it to him carefully. It's beautiful. Everyone's going to love it. Thomas peeked inside the box, his eyebrows shooting up. This is what cost $65? It's just cake, Rose. Something in his tone made her bristle. You ordered it, Thomas. You wanted it to be special. Not this special, he muttered, closing the box. Not worth all this. Rose wasn't sure if he meant the cake or something more. She didn't get a chance to ask as Joey bounded into the kitchen. Is that the famous cake? Can I see? And just like that, the moment for private conversation was gone. Rose watched as Thomas carried the cake to the table, candles lit while everyone sang, "Happy Birthday." The cake was indeed beautiful. But as Rose looked at Thomas's tight expression across the flickering candles, she couldn't help but wonder if its price would prove to be more than just dollars and cents. Rose stared at the flickering candles on her cake, the chorus of "Happy Birthday" fading around her. Everyone was watching, waiting for her to make a wish and blow out the candles. What could she possibly wish for? That Thomas would stop looking at her like she'd personally emptied their bank account, that the tension crackling between them would disappear, that they could go back to how they were before money troubles had wedged themselves between their happiness. She took a deep breath and blew. The tiny flames danced, then died, and everyone clapped. "Make the first cut, birthday girl," Diane urged, handing her a knife. Rose pressed the knife into the cake, the rich chocolate giving way easily. The hazelnut filling peeked out, creamy and decadent. It did look delicious, worth every penny of the $65 they couldn't afford. "I'll take it from here," Thomas said, taking the knife from her hand. His fingers brushed hers, but there was no warmth in the touch. "Everyone, help yourselves to drinks while I serve this up." Rose watched as Thomas cut slices with mechanical precision, his jaw tight. He passed plates around, his smile not reaching his eyes as their guests thanked him. "This is amazing," Mrs. Washington said after her first bite. "You must tell me where you got it." "Sweet Delight's Bakery," Rose answered. "They did a beautiful job." "They certainly did," Paul, Thomas's brother, agreed. "Must have cost a pretty penny." Thomas's hand froze in the middle of cutting another slice. "Worth every cent for my wife's special day," he said, but his voice was strained. Conversation flowed around them as everyone ate cake and sipped coffee. Rose tried to join in to be the happy birthday girl, but her eyes kept drifting to Thomas. He stood slightly apart from the group, barely touching his cake, checking his phone repeatedly. As the gathering continued, Rose pulled Diane aside. "Can you keep everyone entertained for a few minutes? I need to talk to Thomas," Diane squeezed her hand. "Of course. Take your time." Rose found Thomas in their bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone. "Hey," she said softly, closing the door behind her. "Everything okay?" He looked up, his expression unreadable. "Fine." Rose sat beside him, leaving space between them. "You don't seem fine." "What's going on, Thomas? And don't say nothing." He sighed, dropping his phone onto the bed. "I got fired yesterday." The words hit Rose like a physical blow. "What? Why didn't you tell me?" "How could I?" His voice was hollow. "You were so excited about your birthday. And then there was the cake, and..." He trailed off, rubbing his face with his hands. "But that's exactly why you should have told me," Rose said, fighting to keep her voice level. "We're supposed to be a team, remember? For better or worse." "Some team," Thomas scoffed. "I've been carrying us for months while you..." "While I what?" Rose cut in. "While I've been looking for work every single day? Applying for jobs, going to interviews, trying to contribute?" Her voice rose despite her efforts. "And now that I've finally got good news, a full-time position, you can't even be happy for me?" Thomas stood abruptly. "Of course I'm happy for you. But it doesn't change the fact that I got fired, does it? It doesn't change the fact that we're drowning in debt." "No, it doesn't," Rose admitted. "But it's a start. We'll figure it out together. Like we figured out the cake," Thomas shot back. $65, Rose, $65 we don't have for what? Sugar and flour?" Rose felt heat rising in her cheeks. "That was your idea, not mine. You're the one who insisted on making my birthday special. You're the one who ordered that specific cake. You're the one who said it was handled." "I didn't know it would cost that much." Thomas's voice rose to match hers. "I thought..." A soft knock interrupted them. The door cracked open and Joey's face appeared. Aunt Rose? Mom wanted me to tell you we're ready for gifts whenever you are." Rose forced a smile. "Thanks, Joey, we'll be right out." When the door closed, she turned back to Thomas. "We can't do this now." "Not with everyone here," Thomas nodded stiffly. "Fine, let's go play happy couple for your family." Thomas, but he was already opening the door. plastering on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Back in the living room, Diane had arranged Rose's gifts on the coffee table. Everyone watched as she opened them one by one. A scarf from the Washingtons, a novel from Diane and Joey, a gift card from Paul and Grace. "Open ours last," Thomas said, handing her a small, poorly wrapped package that looked like it had been done in a hurry. Inside was a keychain with a tiny paintbrush charm, a nod to her art teaching. It was sweet, thoughtful even, but all Rose could think about was the silver bracelet he'd left that morning. Had that been before or after he'd learned he was fired? "Thank you," she said, leaning over to kiss his cheek. "It's perfect." Thomas nodded, a flicker of genuine emotion crossing his face for the first time that evening. As the gathering began to wind down, the Washingtons were the first to leave, followed by Paul and Grace. Diane lingered, helping to clean up while Joey played a game on his phone. "Are you sure you're okay?" Diane asked Rose quietly as they loaded the dishwasher. "I'm fine," Rose lied. "Just tired." Diane clearly didn't believe her, but didn't push. "Call me tomorrow, okay?" After they left, silence settled over the apartment. Thomas was in the living room, collecting empty cups and plates. Rose joined him, neither speaking as they cleaned up the remains of the party. When the last dish was washed and the leftovers put away, they stood in the kitchen, the cake box between them on the counter. More than half the cake remained, a reminder of the day's tensions. "I should take a piece to Victor at the bakery," Rose said, breaking the silence, "to thank him for letting me take the cake without paying the balance." Thomas's expression darkened. "His name is Victor, and he was kind to us, to me. When I was standing there, humiliated because I couldn't pay for the cake you promised to handle," Thomas's face flushed. "So now it's my fault? Everything's my fault?" "That's not what I said." "It's what you meant." Thomas slammed his hand on the counter, making the cake box jump. "Ever since you lost your job, you've been looking at me like I'm not doing enough, like I'm failing you somehow." "That's not true," Rose protested. "I've been grateful for everything you've done. I've been trying what? To make me feel like less of a man? Well, congratulations, Rose, mission accomplished. I got fired, I couldn't pay for your stupid cake, and now you've got a job while I've got nothing." The words hung in the air between them, ugly and raw. Rose stared at him, seeing not the man she'd married, but a stranger twisted by pride and fear. "Is that what this is about?" she asked quietly. "You're upset that I found a job before you found a new one?" Thomas didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. Rose shook her head, tears threatening. "I can't believe this. After everything we've been through, you're making this about your ego?" "It's not about my ego," Thomas shouted. "It's about being able to take care of my wife. It's about not feeling like a failure every time I look at you." "I have never ever made you feel like a failure," Rose said, her voice breaking. "That's all in your head, is it?" Thomas grabbed the cake box, opening it roughly. "This cake. This overpriced fancy cake that we can't afford. You said nothing when I ordered it, even though you knew we were struggling. Because it seemed important to you," Rose cried. "Because you kept saying you wanted to make my birthday special. And now we owe money to a bakery on top of everything else." Thomas jabbed his finger at the cake. "All for this." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Thomas lifted the cake from its box, his hands shaking with anger. Rose saw it coming but couldn't move fast enough. With a grunt of frustration, Thomas hurled the cake at her, the chocolate frosting and hazelnut filling exploding against her chest and face. Cold shock ran through. Rose's body as cake dripped down her blue dress, the dress she'd worn because Thomas once said it brought out her eyes. Chocolate smeared her skin, filling her nostrils with its rich scent, now sickeningly sweet. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Thomas stared at her, his expression shifting from rage to horror as he realized what he'd done. "Rose," he whispered, reaching toward her. "I didn't—" She held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Cake fell from her fingers in clumps, landing with soft plops on the kitchen floor. "Don't," she said, her voice eerily calm. "Don't say another word." Chocolate dripped from Rose's chin onto the kitchen floor. The silence in the apartment was so complete she could hear the soft plop of each droplet landing. Thomas stood frozen, his empty hand still held out in front of him, his face a mask of horror at what he'd just done. "Rose," he whispered again. She raised her hand again, cutting him off. With deliberate slowness, Rose wiped a streak of frosting from her cheek. She looked at the chocolate on her fingers, then met Thomas's eyes. "Is this what we've become?" she asked, her voice surprisingly steady. "Is this who we are now?" Thomas's arms fell limply to his sides. "I don't know what happened. I lost control." Rose nodded, as if he'd confirmed something she'd been wondering about for a long time. "Yes, you did." She walked to the sink, turned on the tap, and began washing the cake from her hands. The water swirled brown down the drain. Thomas watched her, seemingly unsure if he should approach or keep his distance. "Aren't you going to yell at me?" he finally asked, his voice small. "Throw something back?" Rose turned off the water and reached for a dish towel. "Would that make you feel better? If I screamed and threw things too?" "No, but then what's the point?" She dabbed at the front of her dress, though the chocolate stain had already set into the blue fabric. "One of us throwing things is enough." Thomas slumped against the counter, running his hands through his hair. "I don't know what's happening to me, Rose. Getting fired, the money problems. I feel like I'm drowning and I can't see a way out." Rose looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time in weeks. The circles under his eyes had darkened. His shoulders curved inward as if bearing an invisible weight. The proud man she'd married seemed to have vanished, leaving behind someone she barely recognized. But beneath the cake smears and the hurt, Rose felt something unexpected stirring in her chest. Not anger, as Thomas clearly anticipated. Not even disappointment. Instead, she felt a sudden, powerful clarity. "We need to talk," she said. "Really talk. Not yell, not accuse. Just talk." Thomas blinked, clearly surprised by her calm response. "Okay. But first," Rose added, gesturing to her cake-splattered appearance, "I need to clean up. And so does the kitchen." Thomas nodded quickly. "I'll clean the kitchen. You go. Take a shower." Rose headed to the bathroom, peeling off her ruined dress as soon as the door closed behind her. Under the hot shower spray, she let the tears finally come. Not dramatic sobs, but quiet, steady tears that mixed with the water and disappeared down the drain. By the time she turned off the water, she felt oddly peaceful, as if the shock of Thomas's outburst had washed away months of pretending things were fine when they clearly weren't. She dried off and put on comfortable clothes, soft gray sweatpants and an old college t-shirt. No point in dressing up anymore. This conversation needed honesty, not appearances. When Rose returned to the kitchen, she found it spotless. The cake had been cleaned from the floor and counters, the trash taken out. Thomas had even made tea, 2 mugs steaming on the table. He sat in his usual chair waiting for her. "Better?" he asked cautiously as she sat across from him. "Cleaner, at least," Rose replied, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Thank you for cleaning up." Thomas stared into his tea. "Rose, I'm so sorry. I've never done anything like that before. I swear to you, I never will again." "I believe you," she said, and was surprised to find that she meant it. "But Thomas, we can't ignore what led to this." "Not anymore," he nodded slowly. "I know. When did you find out about losing your job?" Rose asked. 2 days ago. "Tuesday afternoon." Thomas took a sip of tea, his hands trembling slightly. "I was going to tell you that night, but then I remembered your birthday was coming and the cake, and I didn't want to ruin everything. So you kept it to yourself, again." "Again?" Rose set down her mug. "This is what we do, Thomas. We keep things from each other, thinking we're protecting each other. You didn't tell me about getting fired. I didn't tell you immediately about getting my job back. We're both trying to carry everything alone, and it's breaking us." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "I was ashamed," he finally admitted. "I've always been the provider. My dad worked 2 jobs to support us growing up. He never complained, never failed. And now look at me. I can't even keep a job in a construction company that's desperate for workers." "What happened?" Rose asked gently. "Why did they let you go?" Thomas sighed. "I've been late too many times. Missed deadlines. The foreman said my work has been slipping for weeks. He's right, I haven't been focused. All I can think about is how we're going to pay the bills, how I'm letting you down." "You're not letting me down, Thomas." He looked up, his eyes damp. "Aren't I? You married a man who promised to take care of you. Now we can barely afford groceries. And then today with that stupid cake." Rose reached across the table and took his hand. "I didn't marry you because you promised to take care of me. I married you because we promised to take care of each other. There's a difference." Thomas squeezed her hand but said nothing. "Do you remember our first apartment?" Rose continued. "That tiny place with the leaky ceiling and the neighbor who played trumpet at midnight? A small smile tugged at Thomas's lips. And the cockroaches. Don't forget those. We were so broke, Rose said. Eating ramen for days straight. But we were happy, weren't we? We were. What changed, Thomas? When did money become more important than us? Thomas thought for a moment. I don't know. Maybe when your sister bought that big house, or when my brother got that promotion. Suddenly everyone around us seemed to be moving forward and we were stuck. Rose nodded. I felt it too. Like we were falling behind in some race we didn't even know we'd entered. She paused, tracing the rim of her mug. But that's the thing, isn't it? We let other people's lives make us feel bad about our own. We started measuring success in dollars instead of happiness. It's hard not to when the bills are piling up, Thomas said. I know, but throwing cake at each other isn't going to pay those bills. Rose almost smiled at how absurd it sounded. We need a plan, Thomas. A real one, together.